The greatest coach of all time has never won a CS2 Major. The greatest rifler of all time has never won a CS2 Major. And the greatest IGL of all time wants to win a CS2 Major. karrigan. Zonic. NiKo.
There's other teams out there who can overtake them.
No, I'm actually going to disagree with you on this one. Here's why. Counterpoints returns, and let's just not even waste any time at all. If you've ever watched this show, the angle that we've actually addressed 1 million times, if it ever came to karrigan, his career, it's actually an angle we kept bringing up again and again and again, is obviously as FaZe gradually deteriorated, part of you thought, what if karrigan could do his own Fallen-esque last dance and go and have one last run with a contender and just sort of see on the way out the door, could I win some championships if I had one of the best rosters, since he's obviously probably the most famous IGL ever of having superstar players and getting big results out of them and being competitive at majors. But the funny thing is, back then, if you remember, whether it was Na'Vi or fucking Mouse or whoever, joke is it was Falcons by the time they got Monacy, if anyone suggested that, at the time the perception was, actually though, that like Falcons, if he was ever to do it, is unreasonable because it's got NiKo and Zonic, who literally took turns kicking him from the biggest teams he was ever in at the time of his career. And then also you have the whole angle of like, but isn't karrigan Mr. FaZe? Isn't FaZe supposed to be his project? Surely he, you know, you think of people where it's like, don't they want to retire in that jersey? It's a big thing in sports, isn't it? You want to be on like your home team that you sort of built your name with. At the end, it's why actually in football, some people even sign the 1-year contract at the end to just retire with that team so they can be remembered in that. So I think a lot of people thought, if you're karrigan, you either want a team that can win a major in FaZe, or you just retire and you go, you know what, that's my run, that was all I had. Instead, Pimp, probably one of the craziest fucking roster moves ever. Now, look, it's not confirmed that karrigan goes to Falcons, but it basically is. Because here's the thing. When so-called insiders say things on Twitter or their stream, I've literally seen those same insiders be wrong, or, more importantly, this is the difference between leaking and journalism, they were right that like that was an interesting move, or it was talked about, or the player wanted to join, or the team wanted, but the move never got done, and the move never even had a contract ever offered to anyone, and nobody was ever going to sign. Difference is, when I see Hitch on TV, not only say this person reported the rumour, but we've confirmed it with our sources. Put it this way, I don't know if I've ever seen Hitch on TV in the modern day put something on their website that was just a rumour that wasn't like legit. That implies to me, by the way, when they say their sources, I could even literally believe that was like the like FaZe, put it that way, confirmed it behind the scenes or something absurd, or the player himself, or you know, I could actually believe they got it. So we're going to treat this as legit. Like, it actually seems to me like it's going to happen. It's just a formality that both sides officially announce it. So Pimp, in theory, this is one of the moves you wanted, mate. If people go back to last year's episodes, this is your sort of dream for karrigan at the end of his career, right?
Yeah, I guess it's just the timing. The timing is everything, and that's the weird one about this. I think there's a million different ways we can attack it, but I think first and foremost, I just want to say the timing is kind of outrageous, you know, because obviously FaZe didn't make the major, even though that they tried their absolute best and signed out to whatever lands, you know, and really did their best in order to try to game the system and make it, but they couldn't, unfortunately. And that leaves this opportunity now where you have Falcons, who's just been lackluster, you know, for a long time, haven't really done anything in 2026, and you have karrigan, you know, who is, as you said, you know, considered a GOAT in-game leader, and by many still considered a guy that probably could make big things happen with big rosters. So the timing is kind of funny, I feel like, especially that the rules allow for a player like karrigan to switch from FaZe into Falcons as well, before the major, if we were to understand it correctly. I think even more so, it's also, it's like, I would have loved that to be a move that would be thought through, you know, that would be desired by karrigan himself, that would be Falcons, you know, trying to make that happen as well, and explore it, you know, and make it a thing where, okay, this is something we proactively want to do because we think it's the right move. This is not something we do because his team is shit and FaZe is doing shit and our teams is shit and everyone, like, it's just we're trying to make us less shit, you know, in that regard. So I think the timing for me is what makes it a little less satisfying. But then when I put that aside and I think, okay, karrigan in Falcons, stylistically speaking, and that's where I think it gets interesting when we dive into like the finer and minor details of it. Stylistically speaking, his fracking has never been worse. We discussed that in a couple of episodes. karrigan is arguably the worst version of himself from an individual standpoint he's ever been. But I think there's one team in the world that that doesn't matter. That's within Falcons. When you have Kiyusuke, Monesi, and NiKo, and that is the core of your firepower, your in-game leader can allow himself to be a karrigan sitting at a 0.82 rating, which he's done for this year. So I don't think that's not an issue. Second of all, and that's something I want to pick your brain on as well, and something we should dive into, I think, it's the whole combination of karrigan and zonic together. It's something I've been talking a lot about during my segment throughout the years as well. The karrigan, if you look at his track history, he never really wanted a coach that interfered with the game plan, that interfered with how the team was supposed to be run or what kind of style they were playing. He wanted a second-hand man. He wanted a sort of like a sixth player almost that would always have his back, So whenever karrigan called something, whenever they were at a tournament, he wanted the coach to have his back. Because what karrigan always suffered, which you described in the intro, is that he was always being kicked from some of these teams because the coach didn't have his back. He got kicked from FaZe, he got kicked from Astralis, he got kicked from some of these bigger projects, and he always felt like, okay, so at the end of the day, I'm just a player that can get kicked like everyone else. I want to kind of bulletproof myself within FaZe Clan, so whenever I have a coach by my side, officially the coach is also having a say in the roster and the style, and I need to make sure that me and the coach are like locked in together. So that's never going to be a thing. So I'm never going to get kicked, from a project that I'm not done with. And that's kind of how he's been looking at the coach and how he's been working with Neo and how he worked with Robin in FaZe as well. And now he's teaming up with zonic, who's like stylistically the coach who were labeled in Astralis as he's the guy making all the choices. He's the guy choosing what players to play. He's the guy who's benching Sipnix and bringing in Bubsky as a sixth man, all that kind of stuff. And now they're supposed to work together. So from a stylistic point of view, like it's never really been a match. But I think zonic has come to the conclusion that, okay, he can't make Falcons work in the current version with Kixen as an in-game leader. Maybe he needs to give up, on some of his philosophies, and no better guy to do that than karrigan. And same goes for karrigan. Maybe he realized that, okay, I cannot in 2026 not have a coach who have more of an impact. Like, we weren't even discussing Neo being removed from FaZe. It didn't even seem like a big talking point, because what was he really doing within that roster? Did he really have a big impact? Whereas now zonic obviously is almost, more impactful than some of the players in Falcons. So I think the dynamic between karrigan and zonic moving forward, where both of them will have to swallow a couple of camels, both of them will have to swallow some of their pride and basically engage in a working relationship that they never thought would be possible, because both of them have been in two failed projects for a long, long time. And I think the combination of that, with the history, zonic being maybe the greatest coach of all time, karrigan being maybe the greatest in-game leader of all time, but when you put them together, stylistically, never really a great match. We're now supposed to believe in 2026 that that's going to save Falcons. I think that makes it mega, mega, mega interesting. I'm not ruling it out that it can work, but it's not a no-brainer per se.
I think this actually is going to be one of the biggest moves in the history of Counter-Strike, because, as you said, there's a lot of reasons, like historical reasons and stylistic reasons, that this wouldn't even make sense. It's more like, this is actually the sort of topic, by the way, that actually if a fan who's like a newer fan was like, hey, you say Falcons has all these star players and they play a loose style, why don't they just sign karrigan? You'd go, oh, my sweet summer child, let me explain to you the context of the esports scene. That doesn't make sense for many reasons. As you say, Pimp, first of all, like, NiKo kicked him, obviously thought he was a choker, didn't believe in him back then. zonic removed him, thought he wasn't the right person to lead the Astralis core. Look, by the way, zonic did win a lot of fucking majors with someone else in the Astralis core. They had the whole thing where it was like, as you say, there's the angle on, like, he's his absolute worst as a fragger too, like that part. It's not like he's going to join and just frag. If anything, he's going to join just to control the others. But here's what I think makes this move kind of cool is there's so many angles that instantly go against and for it at the exact same time. I've also never seen a move, like, put it this way, if this was a movie, I'll tell you how I do the trailer as you're about to go into the summer for the summer blockbuster that is Falcons win the Cologne Major. Here's what happens. So it's like,
the greatest coach of all time has never won a CS2 Major. The greatest rifler of all time has never won a CS2 Major. And the greatest IGL of all time wants to win a CS2 Major. karrigan, zonic, NiKo. This summer, the three guys you didn't want to see win a CS2 Major, whatever, some shit like that, isn't it? Because this is like a movie script, bro. This is like, it's actually an angle, I can't lie. It's some straight pure, inject it into my veins, 80s American action movie plot, where, like, in the first movie, the either antagonists or the actual villain and the hero. In the second movie, they have to team up to fight an even bigger villain. This is like fucking X-Men 2, where, like, Magneto and Professor X have to get together and fight that bigger threat who's like that psychic kid who can kill all the mutants or whatever. That's dope.
up. Already we're in. Like, by the way, I'll tell you what right now. You know that whole restriction we all have from 2 years ago where it's like, cause of that Boros thing, you were mean. Stop recording that. Start recording it. Record it all. I want it like FaZe Clan. I want every fucking second behind the scenes at that major, homie. I want to see them do those. I want to see karrigan's speech before the playoff match. I want to see if they play Vitality, what they say beforehand. I want it all, mate. Inject it into my veins. Even if the project fails, even if they lose every fucking match, just give me that at least, because the drama alone is crazy on this one. Like, here's one part people haven't even thought of, Pimp. What if it doesn't work out? What the fuck do they all say in the interviews after that, homie? That'll be a spicy meatball. So first of all, the pure narrative is fucking gorgeous. Then you've got, as you say, a lot of angles that go simultaneously for and mega exciting. So I think it's a baller move. But also, all of them have an element in which, like, that could also make it fail. Like, I'll give you an obvious example, which is, you nailed it there. A lot of people have missed this detail, which is, bro, like, it's not like they wait till the end of the season and then either karrigan's contract ended or they just said, you know what, KickSun, it didn't work out. We've tried it with you. Actually, karrigan, we'd like you to join the team. Let's do one last season or one last year together. As you say, this is something we've all sat down and thought about with level heads. No, what this sounds like is this. If you're karrigan, it's almost like he was, you know what? The joke is, at this point in time, karrigan's just battling the media. Because remember, everyone in the media was like, karrigan has been officially eliminated from the major. And then he was like, hold up. And then he just flew to fucking Serbia and then was in the final like 1 map from making it. He almost ruined that. Then it's like, right, no, now he's been officially... And you saw all those posts. He's now no longer the oldest IGL to make it to the major. karrigan's major streak snapped. And it's like he just sat around like... There has to still be a way, though. This is like, if you've ever seen the show Billions, this is like the sort of thing they do in Prestige TV where the genius main character always just has to go away. And then the last scene, they just come up with the craziest way to save themselves ever. Like, they got some next that they put in a call to someone. Like, in this case, you put in a call to your main enemy. He helps you out, you know. It's just so crazy. And then on the side of Falcons, what's funny is, I get why karrigan's doing this move, Pimp. FaZe looks like it's over. It looks like they're never getting any more good players. Also, I said this earlier, bro, they're probably going to be shit at IM Atlanta and not even get invites for the second season. Like, FaZe is just done. Like, you have to basically start over. In fact, you could even argue, we used to go the other way. You should add 1 or 2 players to FaZe. At this point, you could actually argue FaZe should keep fucking FaZe, Frozen and Twist and sign a VRS core. That would actually probably be the most logical move for their org, even if it's a smaller one, just to get the fucking invites. Because I actually think the karrigan side makes way more sense. What people aren't addressing is the fucking Falcon side, mate. Like, first of all, if you are Zonic, I'm sorry, bro, this move is you actually just admitting to everyone in the world you were completely wrong about either KickSun or TSS's roles or even adding Kiyosuke. It's basically you admitting, like, your big move. You made all those decisions, by the way. Nobody had a gun to your head on any of those. You made them all. And at the end of it all, you basically had to, like, magic marker erase it all and now just bring in, I'll just bring in the greatest IGL of all time, who, by the way, is a specialist. Remember, now he's even almost the stand-in at using, like, quick lineups to do checks notes well at majors, which is like, and by the way, Falcons thus far never done well at a major. So that already sounds like you just admitted it. And then also, I'm with you. You didn't do this. This wasn't even top 5 moves you were thinking of at the beginning of the year. You just did it at the end. And I'm sorry, this is a vote of no confidence for me from Zonic that his roster can't win the IM Cologne Major. I think if he really believed they could, by the way, because think about the opposite side of that. If he wins with this roster before he gets karrigan, it's the opposite of what I just said. He proves all those things were right. I've always said if Zonic did ever win, by the way, he'd have the ultimate fuck you to the scene. He'd be like, actually, I did know what I was doing with Tess's roles. I did know that it was a gamble with KSU, but it was the right gamble. Oh, I knew that KickSun could make it in my system and my style. I could play with NiKo. Because I also think another thing people are missing here is this is just what you call in American football a Hail Mary. You're just going for a crazy move to win the game because you can't win any other way. But I'll tell you what, I also do like that because if you were to script the best Hail Mary ever, this is it, isn't it? This is the one. I'll even say this as well. That's also what's cool and does make the relationship different with both Zonic and NiKo. So first of all, with NiKo, I can tell you, right, it's not true that he actually said, kick this guy, like, as in you have to do it. He wasn't really the God Emperor. He was just a star player. But I've heard he was just the one behind the scenes that was like, I mean, obviously he literally replaced him before he left. But then he was also just like, yeah, let's get rid of this guy. Now, the reason why wasn't valid, actually. It's why you've seen this many times, mate. You have seen karrigan do interviews, both the one with NiKo and other ones, where he sort of admits he doesn't resent them for kicking him from FaZe, even though he will not, because he understands, if you remember back then, this is funny, fans never remember this. Both Carrigan and Device were known in their respective roles as the biggest chokers ever at the majors. It's like, these are the guys that like just couldn't win it when they had a million chances. That's not Carrigan's identity now. Carrigan's identity, like Device, is the opposite. It's like, mate, this is the guy you go all in on at the major. If anything, that last run just showed me he doesn't need a fucking good team. He still might fuck around and make the final of the major. I tell you what, if I'm Falcons, that's a very different proposition for NiKo than when it was the guy where it's like, so I'm on a super team with Olaf and Guardian, all these greatest players ever. We can't win because this guy didn't call the game, which is what they think in the final. By the way, Carrigan would admit as much himself. Similarly for zonic, if zonic really wanted to play Astralis CS, we talked about this on a past episode, it seems like he did it early on in Vitality and then had to switch up at the end as well. It seems like he's done it again here and it hasn't worked. I think, again, if you're going to like be able to humble yourself, the best person, if you take names off the table, this type of IGL ship is Carrigan. Like, he just is. Like, Kixon wasn't bad, in my opinion. I think a lot of the mistakes were player-based. But he also wasn't making wizardry calls. He wasn't some genius where, oh, my God, how did he do it? And then lastly, you look at those players, if anything, I actually think also Carrigan will be slightly humbled in the sense that if he has NiKo and Monacy, he isn't telling them what to do, boys. He's creating the game from which they can then dominate the game. So I am actually super hyped about this. And lastly, as I said there about the whole choking thing, I actually think if you are the players in Falcons, this is the only IGL right now in Counter-Strike where people actually do on some superstitious, like, witchcraft level believe he has magic at the majors. Everyone does. We all sort of low-key do. Like, there's just some incredible, in fact, generally the prestige tournaments, it just somehow something just happens with this guy. And when you have that, it's like I can tell you in hockey they do this. If people have like a goal streak in hockey, they do shit like just don't change the way they put their socks on or they tape the stick the same way until the streak is broken, because the logic is they don't change anything, whatever you're doing. So I think low-key this move cooks, bro. I'm so hyped. Even if it fails, like, by the way, absolutely could also blow, every one of those deals could blow up in everyone's face. And it could be the biggest drama ever. But you know what? I'm here for that too.
Yeah, that's the cool thing about it, because I agree. I agree. And that's, regardless of how you present it, like you even did it a couple of times in your little speech right here, that like there's a for and against in pretty much every single aspect of this. It could work out, but it also could be a disaster. This could be nice, but it also could be a disaster. Yes. Another little contradictory thing is obviously Karrigan being arguably the most likable player of all time. Maybe the GOAT in-game leader. Now he's joining Falcons, who's arguably the most hated team for no reason of all time. I say for no reason, but maybe more hated than they deserve to be. Sure. Let's put it that way, at least from a player perspective. So how's that going to play out? The Karrigan that everyone likes, that has never put a foot wrong, that has gotten away with all sorts of questionable things compared to other players as well in a regard. And now he's joining Falcons. Does that change the perception of Karrigan, or are people going to do like they always fucking do, just forget about it? Oh yeah, Falcons are cool now. We never really meant what we said. It's like that's how it's going to be. I bet you. I bet you. I
hadn't thought of that. That's true. Yeah. Will we actually see Karrigan get booed on stage, bro? You're right, because Falcons are sort of villains, right?
I want to see, personally, honestly speaking, and not against Karrigan, I want to see those fans, treat them like they treated the other Falcons players. If you want to put them all across the same place, if you boo NiKo, you boo Monacy, or if you go hard on them on social media and you call them sellouts, etc., you better treat Karrigan the same way. Personally, you know where I stand. I don't agree with that. I think the fans are mostly stupid in that regard, but keep the same energy. You've been doing it now for a year and a half on Falcons. You've been treating them, I think, unfairly. Again, organization is one thing, the players themselves is another. So I want to see you treat Karrigan the same way, because if you back down now and you're like, okay, they're good enough, Karrigan joined, they must be nice guys, then you were just virtue signaling for the entire fucking time.
No, it's bullshit.
At least you get a call out on that one. Another note as well, and that's where it gets interesting to me, because you kind of touched it briefly. I am super curious to see the communication coming out from Karrigan and Falcons in regards to this move, because you labeled it as a Hail Mary move, and from the outside, I kind of agree that's what it looks like. Maybe the last project for Karrigan, maybe the Hail Mary move for Falcons, realizing that this is not working out, but you can't really, again, we don't know if he's been signed for 6 months. We don't know if he's been signed on a 2-year contract.
I actually said this on Twitter, Pimp. I heard a rumour last year that FaZe already knew Karrigan's contract was going to wind down, and that's why maybe they were even waiting to see if he retired. And that's a part people are missing as well, Pimp. Maybe this move also is just for that major, and if they don't win, they don't have to sign him. Maybe his contract ends after that or something. Could be, right?
That could be, and that to me is super, super interesting, because if they come out and they communicate that, listen, Karrigan is here for more than just a major, it's a quote-unquote long-term project. Obviously, Cologne, we have no expectations, but we're looking to peak at the Shanghai Major next year, the PGL Shanghai Major, end of the year. If that's going to be the communication, which I kind of feel it would be, I don't think they're going to pull off a phase with Simple where they say this is just for the major, then we're going to see afterwards. I think karrigan is too big of a signing, too big of a name, and in all honesty, I'm not sure karrigan would even want that. I don't think he's at the point in his career where he's like, I'm going to pull off a Hail Mary here. If it doesn't work out, then I quit. I think karrigan is a little bit more driven than that. He's always involved in projects, etc., etc. But what that tells me as well is that if the communication is going to come out and be that we signed karrigan for long-term purposes, like we believe that that's going to be great for Cologne, that's going to be great for the second half of the calendar, and it may just be a 6 months or a 1 year contract. What that also tells me is that then NiKo is not ready to live up to the words that he's been sort of like establishing for a long, long time, that he eventually want to take over the in-game leading role. Because if you came to the conclusion that Kixon is not the right man for you right now, and you want to replace him with another in-game leader, that being karrigan, that must mean that you've had the conversation with NiKo as well. Are you ready to maybe take over as an in-game leader? And he's probably lined up, the different outcomes, there's different possible scenarios, and it may be the case that internally the team has been okay. If we can't sign karrigan, then NiKo, you take over. But NiKo went like, if we can't sign karrigan, then I would like to stay as a player just for a little longer, right? So to me, that is also a very interesting prospect, because if they come out and they communicate that it's just for this. It's just for Cologne. We're going to see after the player break. Maybe we sign him, maybe we don't. That kind of keeps the door open for NiKo taking over as an in-game leader post summer break, and then maybe signing another superstar, signing another player in a different role, who knows? But if they communicate that we sign karrigan for long-term purposes, that also kind of kills the idea that NiKo is transitioning into becoming an in-game leader this year. Then maybe next or the following, but I feel like we're moving further away from something that I feel he's been moving closer and closer and closer to. So that's also a bit of a sign in my book. So I think, first and foremost, I agree. The move itself is baller. It's going to be fun. It's going to be entertaining. I want to see all the content around it as well. I could be talking now and until New Year's Eve about why it could be good, why it could be bad from all sorts of like nerdy standpoints within Counter-Strike. But even more so, I want to see how this story develops, because it says a lot about where Falcons is at. It says a lot about where karrigan is at in terms of maybe retirement or not. It says a lot about NiKo in terms of, does he ever want to pick up the in-game leading role, or was it just something he was flirting with publicly, etc., etc. And as you said as well, the whole zonic angle as well. I mean, we said it before and we're going to say it again. If you're not going to work it out this time around with karrigan as an in-game leader, then what is there left for us to believe that you can work it out? I even made the statement during Blast as well. I don't think zonic is a bad coach. I think zonic was wrongfully casted to Falcons. He was never supposed to be the coach of a superstar team with that many superstars, that plays that brand of Counter-Strike. Whereas a guy like Blade, if Blade was signed to Falcons, I think that would have been the same turnout. I don't think Blade necessarily would have done much better than zonic, even though we agree that Blade is absolutely fantastic at his job. It's just not the right match. It's not the right players. It's not the right philosophy for him. So in that regard, I think there's a lot of moving pieces, that once the move happens, which we assume it will, then that's interesting for itself. That's going to give us, 2 months of banger content. As you said, you want to see it all from the Cologne Major. But then after, it raises a lot of follow-up questions. And I'm almost as excited for that period than I am for leading up to the Cologne Major.
By the way, on the NiKo IGL part as well, this is pure speculation because, surprise, surprise, I'm not a friend of NiKo's or a confidant of him or someone who communicates. I have DM'd him a few times. We've gone back and forth, but we're nothing like that. Like, it's not even the person I would even reach out to and say, what's going on behind the scene? Since I'm critical of him, so I think that it'd be kind of BM to have the info and then be using it against the person. Like, I prefer to sort of keep a distance in that sense. So I will just make this speculation, but I think it's right. I think based on how I've seen NiKo be reluctant to take that IGL role, because by the way, when he won that fucking IM Dallas last year, it was the most layup, 2 years ago, sorry, it was the most layup of all time to then just make the transition at that point in time in G2. Like, that was the time when it was, no one would have made any criticism. Everyone would have gone, well, it worked at that event. You did it with Bloody Stewie. You had no stats up to her. Maybe this can work. Maybe this is a good move, but he didn't. And as we say, he's had many chances now since he's lost his role to Keisuke to potentially even go to do that IGL, and he just doesn't do it. And he no longer gives any indication. In fact, when he's been in Falcons, I believe all his interviews just sort of said that like one day he would do it or something. It was something like that. He never said like, soon or like next. I'll tell you the reason why I think it is, and I think he's right, which is, the whole thing of NiKo wants to win a major. Fans do this in sports all the time, bro, right? It's a really sad thing that happens in the NBA, for example, which is at the end of their careers, stars join big teams when they're not stars anymore, and they're just like a bench player, and they try and win a ring if they never won a ring in their career. And when they ring, they go, I got my ring, and I want to go, sorry, bro, you didn't. Like, remember, the context wasn't that you just won a ring. Like, we don't say that no one said the guy on the bench of the teams beating you was like better than you because he had a ring. We mean are you a star player who won a ring as a star player, because the whole point is we're going to use that in a conversation about who was better. And if the first thing the other fan throws in my face is, well, my guy has the rings as a star, yours doesn't, then to some fans, he wins. So the real problem here is I think NiKo, when he says he wants to win a major, wants to win a major as NiKo, as something of a star player who has big impact. And when he wins, it means a lot. I mean, remember when he won his first Katowice, that was the one where he didn't play that well. That kind of was a bomber too, because it was kind of like, well, if your knock against him was he hadn't won Katowice, well, he didn't really win that one either. That was like whatever. I think it was like JKS and Hunter or something were the ones going off in that one. Like that wasn't that great for him. So if he wins as an IGL, listen, it's cool as an IGL, but it's why I'll give you the obvious example, right? Fans do this to me all the time. Whenever I go, well, if you want to compare Apex and Glaive, obviously Glaive has the 4 majors, and they go, Apex has 4 majors. One was as a fucking entry fragger 1 billion years ago, going, yes, sir, and then running through a brick wall. That doesn't count for an IGL discussion. That counts for an overall player discussion. So I do think, actually, that's also why I think he's waiting. I think he'd like to win the IGL, win the major, and then maybe you see him transition IGL. That can then be the second half of his career. You see with Hunter, they've got this vision that that's how they're going to extend their careers. And by the way, they're both very respected players who probably can do that. And then the last thing is this. The thing you said about fans is so on point, bro, because this is the ultimate one to test them. The only way that you could test them further is if Zemu had joined. Someone else who's like beloved and no one hates him. Because, mate, I've seen those fans ever since we did that episode where you called them out. Right, first of all, fans who are dickheads don't watch videos or read. They just see headlines and respond like they know what you said, which is ignorant as fuck, but these people are ignorant. They all got mad at you saying you shouldn't be mad at Falcons, even though your whole impassioned plea was like, I understand there's things about the org and politics that people don't like, but these players, as some of the greatest players in the game, this is a team that could actually accomplish a lot. Because remember, people in the second season when they were in finals and semis used to treat them like they were 11th place or something, mate. People act like at the last major they didn't even make the playoffs. Like, it's crazy. The hatred has just gone way too far. And my problem is this, Pimp. I even said at the time, I have zero problem with people hating on the org and hating on the fucking the Saudi connection. That's fine. But they didn't do that, did they? As you pointed out, they made all their hate towards NiKo, Monacy, Zonic, and it was all about how they're sellouts, blood money, and they're all pieces of shit, and how they're so arrogant. Well, you know what, then, mate? So's Karrigan. You're right. There's your everyone. I think Karrigan is the most beloved player maybe ever in Counter-Strike. He's just joined their teammate. So what are you going to do about that? Well, at this point in time, by the way, if you're Falcons, I'd even fuck with you. I'd just get a little budget and I'd sign like Forrest as my ambassador, get fucking Neo in there. You know, fuck it. You want to go crazy, boys? We'll just bring all your favourites in. Let's see you have to actually hate on all your favourites. Because actually, all those comments, mate, in that episode were like, so I'm not allowed to hate on them because they're Saudi. No, he didn't say that. We said, why you hate on NiKo then, bro? And miss me with the whole, you got the bag and blood. What's that even mean, mate? I still don't know what. Like, I even made this prediction a few years back. Do you remember when Twists left and joined Liquid? As well as Vitality, the rumour for him was he got an offer from Falcons, and he famously said in an interview something like, quite like a little virtuous thing. He was like, I'd never do that shit or something like that, right? I remember thinking, oh, bro, that might sound like a throwaway comment to you, but that could come back to bite you like 10 years down the line. Because, first of all, back then, the rumour I was hearing behind the scenes was, this hasn't happened, they've slowed. Actually, the Saudis wanted to buy more teams, mate. Maybe they were going to buy like 3 top 5 teams and then they just run the fucking scene. So I remember, first of all, thinking, well, you do that means you can't join any of those. Like, what if they bought fucking Team Liquid, mate? What if they bought G2 or something? Like, now you can't join these teams either. And then also, just for fans, as seen with this move, Falcons have crazy money and they can attract superstars. Guess what? Some of your favourite superstars are going to play for Falcons one day, probably while they're owned by the Saudis. So if I was some of you, I would get off that hater train now, because Pimp's right. If those players join and then you go, well, it was really just about the org, well then take back everything you said about NiKo, Monacy and Zonic. Why do you treat them like shit? To me, I don't think those guys ever made this equation you did of blood. They just thought they were joining Real Madrid, mate. They want to win the Champions League. That's the analogy for me.
Yeah, I can't wait either, because I think you're spot on. That is going to be the ultimate litmus test to where that comes from. Where that hate stems from as well, because you're never going to see like reading Reddit comments. By
the way, I can't actually tell which was. That's why it's a great point, Pimp. I genuinely couldn't. Yeah. This is one of the rare times I can't guess, because part of me thinks they hate on Falcons so much they might still hate Karrigan and boo him, and I don't want to see that image, bro. It was bad enough seeing the one where he cried when his brother died and failed the major. Like that broke me. That one where he's crying, not just a normal cry if I lost the tournament. Like he looked really. I don't want to see Karrigan like and here he is, Falcons. He walks out on stage, boo. Like, in Cologne of all. By the way, Cologne's his home place. Remember, he could speak German. He used to be on Mouse. Like that would kill me if they actually booed him. But part of me also does think, Can one man really turn haters around? Can he really get the whole crowd to say, wait a minute, Falcons? Can he? I don't know. In a way, that's a cool test too, Pim. I tell you what, Maui Snake's famous thing, the cultural impact. If Carrigan can make a whole stadium next to hate Falcons, cheer Falcons, maybe this guy's the goat of cultural impact too, mate. That's nuts.
Well, I think I can help you a little bit, because there's a big difference between how Falcons are perceived in stadiums and online, because online it's, as you said, like the most hated team ever, and I think as well as you said, we spoke about it many times. The haters gone too far, and it's weird what's going on at arena events in stadiums. Sure, there's certain people who still do that, but I sense, and that's from having watched Falcons play at numerous playoffs, despite them, as you said, they talked about that they're never in the playoff, that they weren't the second, third best team last year, despite making grand finals left, right, and center. They're always well received, People love watching NiKo play Counter-Strike. People love watching Monacy entertain them in a stadium. People are kind of adopting into Kyusuke as well because he's an entertaining player, especially when we're in Asia. People love Monacy. Yeah. People love Falcons. They have no problem with it whatsoever. But what people hate, and this is like this is where it for me is just like I'm even less active on Twitter nowadays because I just can't stand it anymore. Where people really hate Falcons is online. It's all the online douchebags who is never ever gonna attend the events because they don't care enough. They don't have the money for it. I don't know what the issue is, but there's a distinct separation between people who go at events and people who run their fucking mouth on Reddit and HLTV, and they're not the same people. Personally, I experience it all the time as well. I've never been at an event where I haven't been well received, where people haven't been nice, where people haven't asked for autographs or photographs or anything of any sort of that imagination. Cologne, the incident last year, where they printed a picture of me, in my cycling kit or whatever. That was the first time in my 10-year career I've ever experienced anything, that wasn't necessarily nice to me. Apart from that, everyone, even at that event, was super friendly, super nice, always coming over to you, asking for to have a little conversation, asking for a picture, telling me how big of an inspiration I am, etc., etc. And I really appreciate that. But you would think, knowing my profile as well, that I would be the most hated guy at an event. That people would boo me, that people would never ask me about anything. But that's the same thing that's happening to Falcons at every single event. The hate lives online. The hate lives online by the people who don't care enough to actually attend the events, who arguably are in a social spot where they don't have friends to attend the events with, because that's why they're running their mouth by themselves anonymously on a Reddit account on HLTV. So I think I'll predict it for you. I think they're going to be well received. I think Falcons are going to be one of the most popular teams at events in arenas. But online, it'll probably be 50-50 because there'll always be those guys who are, the loud minority who doesn't go to events, who seemingly care more than everyone else, yet they care less because they're actually not contributing by anything. First and foremost, if you care so much about blood money, care so much about Counter-Strike, care so much about not supporting, what you consider to be the Saudi takeover, etc., how about you show your fucking face at the events in the first place so you generate some revenue for the TOs so they don't have to go that route? But you never did that in the first place, and here we are. So I have no remorse for that. I have no respect for those people whatsoever. But I'll tell you this, in terms of entertainment value, Falcons were already high on the list with Monacy and NiKo. Adding Karrigan to that one, it's gonna be nice. I bet you in Cologne they're gonna be well received regardless.
As the kids say, absolute cinema. That meme of Martin Scorsese or whatever, innit? Also, the other thing is, obviously, one of the reasons people do hate on Zonic, it's sort of a legit one, is famously he even said, I am the bag. So people know he gets paid even if he isn't right. Well, you know what? I agree, that's kind of a nonsense premise. So instead, why don't you guys out there check out Prize Picks? Because there, if you are right, you can get paid, which is the way surely it should work. So over on Prize Picks, it's really easy. Once you do $5 in lineups, they will give you $50 in lineups immediately afterwards. And what makes this really simple is it's a load of different sports that are out there. And for example, if you're watching basketball right now, the play-in tournament starts soon to go to the playoffs. It's actually a really exciting one. There's loads of like top teams that all have their own reasons. Like there's like 4 different teams have a potential MVP, etc. So there's plenty of action coming up. Obviously, there's all the stuff going on in other sports too. Check it out. Basically, it's simple. They just give you a bunch of stats projections, like this player will have this many 3-pointers, this many points, this many rebounds, this many, loads of different players in all the leagues. All you do is pick the ones you want to do as your lineup. Just look at what the stat is, and if it says he will make 3-pointers in this next game, you just decide, does he do more? Does he do less? It's really simple. Just a binary option, and you pick the ones you like. And there's a bazillion people to pick from. You don't have to suddenly pick like 50 or an entire team, you can pick from one game, one team, team. You can take the same player and put him in different ones for different features if it's your favourite player or it's a reproductive player, like Jokic, for example, does a triple-double basically every game almost. Maybe you pick him for points, rebounds, assists. There's all the different angles you can go with there. If you do SGA, maybe you do three-pointers, points and steals or something. It's really easy to do. It's really simple. It's basically just about what's your feel for the game, what's your prediction, what could happen with a little bit of luck in the game. It's also really fun. You can copy your picks, show people. You can copy the picks of people who've been successful previously. There's a million different angles to it. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code COUNTER to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code COUNTER to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Okay, Pimp. Moving on from that. In the same way as we discussed all those old players who want to win the major and this is the big stakes, a team that had no stakes at all, no expectations, and have just constantly broken the barrier for these expectations is that FUT team. And by the way, if people go back, we can go back. They're the team, if people forget, that online at the beginning of the year almost beat Furia in that Blast Bounty qualifier. Then they did beat them at Krakow, and then they've had all these amazing matchups where we talked about them a few times. They form an RV Junior lineup. Like, obviously, Mouse gets the award. You had the best academy squad ever because look at what you literally made it your team, and then you fucking won championships. But I tell you what, this FUT one, this RV Junior one is fucking crazy, bro. I'll remind people, the star player of this team used to be Makaze. They then went and got Lanks, who everyone thought was like a boss and no one cared about. He used to play on fucking Bleed and everyone flamed him. He came in, he's their top stats player. At this tournament they just had now, fucking Jugs and Cemetery, the player who everyone was criticising, they were competing head to head for the MVP. Either could have it, in my opinion. And then Krabeni, the IGL, is like probably the best fragging IGL in CS. Like, I know this tournament they won, it was another one of those PGL Bucharests, which just like the one that Aurora won last year, it's not that crazy, just like the one that Falcons won, it's not the nuttiest field ever. But to me, it's just the idea that like this, it's what FUT represent that's so exciting to me, Pimp. Like, they have somehow gotten not just one, two, they've got a whole bunch of players who are just really good. Like, if you watch them in that final, certainly Astralis played like shit. But I tell you what, a reason why, mate, is they were getting their heads blasted out the server like the beginning of every fucking game. It felt like this FUT team is nuts, bro. Like, I've been a fan anyway because I like the style of CS. Like, I like either the really nerdy tactical CS, or if we're not going to do that, let's just fucking brawl. And this is why their best map's Mirage, man. Let's just fuck people up with AKs running on the site. Like, that's CS2. So what do you think of this squad and winning this tournament?
I think it's super, super, super cool. It's just a steady progression. I like steady progression. I love watching a team that you can almost see from tournament to tournament, they get better and better and better. And I think we had a discussion about them a couple of episodes ago as well, where we like, okay, this is a team that is emerging. They're knocking on the door to tier 1. Can they break through it? Maybe, maybe during Cologne, maybe after the summer break. And we're giving them a little bit of a larger timeline, but they're exceeding my expectations in that regard. I said in the beginning of the season that they were my team to watch because I thought to myself they were really interesting. But as you also said, when you take Makasi out of the equation and you think of them, leaving Navi Junior and becoming their own team, becoming a team that has to live up to expectations from FUT, a team that is now under a little bit of a different pressure, not being an academy team anymore, that could maybe hinder or slow down their progression. But they're just getting better and better every single tournament. Even at the PGL Cluj-Napoca, where I was covering them, where they didn't, result-wise, it didn't look that great on the spreadsheet, but every single game they played was competitive.
Yes.
Every single match they play is like they push. And as you said, like, it doesn't matter if the opponent is Furia or if the opponent is 3DMX or Astralis, they always push them to the limit, even when they're losing. So you could definitely see that there was a good team, and it was just a question of time before they got more experience and they kind of calmed their nerves a little bit when they got into overtimes, etc., etc. Because there was an issue of this at Cluj-Napoca that you could visibly see that they were getting more and more frustrated, more and more anxious, and kind of lost, let's say, the body composure a little bit, and naturally for a young team who's never been in that position before, and they seemingly learned from that, and now they're just doing better and better and better. I think they're really, really, really interesting. I think it's very good right now that Navi, the main team, is also doing well. Otherwise, part of that conversation would be, fuck, man, did we let this team go? Did we let all this talent go, that we potentially could have used to rebuild our lineup if that didn't work out? So thank God that we don't have to have that conversation, because Navi is doing well for themselves right now. And I'm also super curious if there is any sort of, I wouldn't expect so. I think FUT is, as I understand it, a pretty big organization. They have a pretty good financial background as well. So not sure if there's any buyback clause installed in any of those players, if they just outright bought the entire core of the team, and now Navi can't touch them unless they're willing to pay an awful lot of money for them. But I really agree that there's a couple of players within that lineup that I could definitely see either move on to bigger teams or potentially build up a legacy within FUT being part of this core lineup and make it into a conversation of being a top 5 team in the world. I don't think that's unrealistic anymore to have that conversation. I'm not saying they are a top 5 or a stable top 8 team yet, but with how fast they're progressing in a world of Counter-Strike, where if you can name me 4 teams right now that is getting better tournament by tournament, I'd give you whatever you want, because I can't. I think Na'Vi is one of the few teams who gradually got better and better, and then obviously Vitality. Hard to make a case they're not getting better, but outside of those 2 teams, is there any team really right now who's just getting better and better and better and really slowly but surely is building up to be a contender for the Cologne Major? I'd put FUT as number 3 team in that category right now. Yet they're starting from a lower standpoint, They're starting from being a team that was, top 20, top 25 at the beginning of the season, but what's to hold FUT back from making the play of IM Cologne right now? Why can't we have those conversations with how well they're playing? So I'm with you, mega exciting. Tactically speaking, it's not that they're only just running and gunning. I think there's certain elements to the game that where they kind of localize that this is our strength, so they're playing into it. But I think it's more than just it's more than a face-it team, but it's definitely the style where, as you said, like there's a reason Mirage is their home map. There's a reason why it's fun to watch. There's a reason why they go into overtimes in a lot of their games. There's a reason why they play with emotions, why they're very expressive in the body language. It is an out-of-body experience watching FUT, and I like that a lot. There's not a lot of teams left with that kind of attitude. There's a lot of calculated teams, a lot of we have to play the perfect way of Counter-Strike. We have to prepare. We have to read, 6 pages of notes in between every round, so we're aware of what's going to happen. And it does feel like FUT is playing more on the intuition, which I kind of like in a day and age where everyone seems to be trying to do everything perfectly.
Yeah, first of all, I agree. That's actually the first thing I noticed when they were just a group stage team was like, no matter even who they played, literally the best teams in the world, they were having competitive matches. And it's like, they always had that like sob story where you could be like, I could have won 2-0, I could have won the third map, it was OT, it was 13. They had that, which is actually for a young team is really good. It's bad if you have that as an older team, because it's like, why can't you win the game? That's even the area I forgive them, Pimp, because if you look at a lot of their losses, it's like this final's a perfect example. Astralis wasn't playing up to their level, but Astralis nicked that overtime nuke game, not one of their strongest maps, and then also it was a map where it went into overtime really, really close. The reason why I can forgive FUT losing close games is that should be where they lose the inexperience. Like the Krabeni guy, he's barely been at tier 1. We're just watching him now, IGL and Frag at the same time. We're seeing all these players that basically, I mean, even Laux himself barely ever played a fucking playoff of a tournament, mate. Like, he was sort of a tier 1.5, tier 2 type player. Like, you unironically could have seen that person end up on like a fucking fly quest rather than play on this team. You know what I mean? Like, that's the sort of position he was in his career. So, actually, I think already they've mad overshot what people would have expected for them. But I'm with you. After seeing the way they've tournament to tournament, like gradually leveled up, and now basically, because this wasn't a super field tournament, for me, this is like just making like another semi-final of a real tournament. You haven't won a tournament yet for me. I care about winning like a tournament with all the top teams there. But the difference is, one, the firepower is there to do that, mate. Like, that is real. That entire event, the whole time, they just blasted everyone's fucking heads off the server. And then also, they're just a mad exciting team because of this like crazy sort of like ability to match up with everyone. So I would love to see them be at least a playoff team at Cologne, even if they then lose to, some top team that beats them out or beats them with experience. Because again, the progression is beautiful. Like this is the dream. If you're their coach and their fucking org, you couldn't have asked for a better way for this to go. Like, even the fact that it just gradually goes up by results as well. And then I will say that last thing there though, which is, we can maybe use this to transition to talk about Astralis a bit too, is the whole closing things out. That also comes with time. I think you need to get reps to do that as well. Because a lot of people, when people say that shit of like, oh, when you're the underdog, it's a lot easier to play. But then when you're a favourite, you have expectations. Yeah, but you want that though, bro. You want to be in the position where you're supposed to win the game, where you're supposed to close out. But you can't do that overnight. It's very, very rare you get people who just win immediately. Like most people, it's why there's a famous saying actually that you have to lose to learn how to win.
Yeah, 100%, and I think just to adding on that point, when you are the underdog and you're all of a sudden in a winning position, that feels unfamiliar, that feels uncomfortable all of a sudden. That's why we often use the phrase that you're playing not to lose, yes. and that's typically a mistake a young team would do, where they get themselves in a winning position. All of a sudden, mid-game, they realize, fuck, we're 2 rounds away from beating FaZe or knocking them out of the major, whatever that may be. And all of a sudden, they start to play a bit more cramped, nerve strikes in, whereas the more experienced team have been there before. They know that they're playing to win, regardless of being behind, etc. So I very much agree with you that, yes, it's sometimes easier to be an underdog team until it's not, until you're in a position where you're actually winning or about to make a big result, which is why we see often that some of these up-and-coming teams are having struggles in that department. But I'd even argue that FUT's quote-unquote struggles are normal, in a sense. And the fact that they're rectifying them so quickly from tournament to tournament, the progression we're talking about is so positive and so reaffirming for how good they're going to be for the future. So yeah, I'm super curious to see how that's going to develop, and I'm curious to see if Cologne is still too early for us to have those expectations. But I definitely have them as a team that if they're playing the level of Counter-Strike we saw during PGL Bucharest and basically we've seen the last 2 months, then there's nothing holding them back for being a team in stage 3 that could fight for a playoff spot. Now, I don't think they're going to win the major. I don't think they're going to be in the semifinal. I think if they were to make it to a quarterfinal, almost regardless of who they face and how their major is going to turn out, I think there's something about that pressure, being in an arena like Cologne, where we're not talking 5,000 people, we're talking 15,000+ people at what's going to be a memorable major regardless. I think that's going to be perhaps too much for them to handle this early on, but just for us to have them in a conversation where it's not outrageous to say that I think FUT will be top 8 at the Cologne Major. I think that's a fair sentiment to have. Do I think it's going to happen? Like if I were to do my price picks right now, probably lean towards no. I think there's more and better teams and more experienced teams who would level up a little bit before Cologne, but they're definitely in the conversation and definitely on the cusp of it. Astralis, on the other hand, I think that's, as you said, you wanted to transition into them. I think that's interesting because they're also getting better. Like they are one of the teams they're progressing, getting better tournament by tournament. I can definitely see what direction they're trying to find with this new roster, but it's from a lower level almost. It's from a lower standpoint than FUT. So even though that I'm excited about the prospect that Astralis is somewhat relevant again, that's where my excitement ends as well, because I don't think that if I were to put FUT and Astralis next to each other, not only based on what we saw in that grand final, which was a blowout, but I also think the potential of FUT is vastly higher than Astralis. I think you need roster changes within Astralis before they can be in the conversations of being a team that is moving into top 8. You need certain players to step it up more often than not. I think Yabi, staying in Astralis and being part of that core still, he's been a little bit underwhelming. I really thought he was good in Copenhagen Flames. I really thought he was going to be great when he was signed to Heroic. At times he was great. I really thought he was going to be better when he then moved into Astralis and could go back in some of the roles he had in Copenhagen Flames, but he's been not underwhelming per se, but just not as good as I thought he would be. So there's still players that I have questions about within Astralis, whereas if I compare them to FUT, who's a team that I guess realistically they're in the same category of teams, I don't have any questions in regards to any of their players. I think they're all going to be great with time. So Astralis is intriguing. It's nice to see them doing better, but I don't know where you stand on them. It's not a team that I think will do too much damage at, let's say, Cologne. Not yet. I think it's a team that is slowly but surely building up to figuring out, okay, what should be the core of this lineup and what can we build upon from here.
Yeah, what's funny is I'll actually start it this way from what you said at the end there. Like, here's what I think about Astralis. I actually think in the context of the players they have and where it looks like their org is. By the way, it looks like their org isn't going to make big signings. I mean, the players they picked up were the sort of players that normally would be in like a Passion UA type team. Like, those aren't the superstar names, of the old Astralis where they were signing the biggest names. In fact, the joke is they don't even sign Danish players anymore, mate. Like, now they just sign anyone, Lithuanian guy, Swedish guy. By the way, I'll just put this out there since everyone loved to make fun back in the day. Boys, we're signing Danish teams are signing Swedish players. Have you no fucking shame, sir? Do you know anything about the cultural identities of these countries? That's fucking cardinal symbol. That's like when fucking my boy Figo went from Barcelona to Real Madrid. What are you doing, son? Like, there's certain rules in the game, unspoken rules, and you just violated one of them no matter how good you are. So that already shows you, though, mate. Beggars can't be choosers. You've got to take who you can at this point in time. Yeah. There aren't Danish players at the top anyway. We can't sign them. I will just throw this out there, though. I actually like the team. I actually enjoy watching Astralis play. I actually think if you forget the name Astralis for a second, if I told you this is the new Gamer Legion lineup, we've got HooXi, we've got Enforzi in. The Ryu guy was Gamble. I'd not really sold on him personally, but I also think he's the player you can easily replace. Forzi's actually, to his level, been pretty good. He's actually shown some real promise. His problem is just this. What does Thorin always say for the last 5 fucking years? The biggest mismatch in professional Counter-Strike is Tier 1 AWPer versus Tier 1 AWPer. Forzi's problem is, he can't, first of all, against FUT, he had a very underwhelming game because those guys shoot like a motherfucker, mate. Those aren't bots you just shoot and jump around a corner. 2 of those guys peek you, one of them gets the kill. If not the first guy shooting you in the head. Then also, he's obviously not going to be monoseed. He's obviously not going to be like a super stud AWPer. He's just a good AWPer. I certainly think in this team he can be one of their stars, but that's also why I do think they cap out a little bit. Like for me, they're the team that at a real tournament could make the playoffs, probably lose in the first round. I don't really personally see them ever making some crazy run, but I actually do think like the Yabby one's interesting because he was the top rated player at this tournament, and until the final he was doing great. I'll tell you the black pill on that, guys. He's not a FUT player who just came along 5 minutes ago. He's been in the scene a lot of time. Sure, he's still young. I think he's only something mad like 23 or 21 or something, something nuts like that, because he just came in so young. But the real problem is this. That's because he was playing in the field of PGL Bucharest, boys. If you ever go and look it up, against actual like top 5 and top 10 teams, he's like a below 1.0 rating player. Like he actually has struggled this year against them. And so people are going to hype him from this one result now. It's like that doesn't do anything for me when we get IM Cologne, mate. That doesn't mean he's going to do some crazy run. And I do think he's been mildly underwhelming in that team. I do think that's a problem they have. If he was really good, maybe this team would even have won this tournament. So the other thing for me is this. Also, I'll just throw this out there. Listen, you know me, I keep fucking score all the time. Everyone loved to tell me that good old Blame F was a bomb because he couldn't IGL the Astralis super team that had signed Stown and Yabby. First of all, Stown doesn't even fucking play Counter-Strike anymore, and Yabby, I just told you, can't do shit against top 10 teams, so it's almost like Blame F wasn't necessarily to blame, as it were, in that particular case. Then, on the whole thing, I'll end though. This is why I also like this team though. Bro, I actually think, unironically, one of the best pieces, maybe the best in his role in this team, is motherfucking HooXi. Everyone thinks I hate HooXi, right? Because sadly, I do a show with Kassad, and I can tell you, Richard Lewis had this. If you do shows with people, they just act like you are the other person, and they hear something on a show that you're on, and you laugh or something, and they think that's your opinion, or they forget who said it, right? Like famously, they sometimes think that like Maui said things I've said, for example, on shows where he certainly hasn't. And so I think actually, I never ever thought HooXi was a bad IGL. I thought the job he did in Copenhagen Flames was pretty good. I actually think he lacked some players that he needed there. Then I thought in G2, I never complained about HooXi famously until they kicked JKS and the results went down a bit, and then Monacy was like insane, but he just couldn't win a tournament because they couldn't get it over the line. They had Nexa, HooXi, NiKo was playing like shit, if you remember, early CS2. Like there was a lot of problems in that team. That's when I started the whole, right, now I'm ready, we've got to kick HooXi. But even then, I never did that for everyone. Same as fans would go, but who could you replace him with? Now, look, this is where fans are wrong. They were telling me, because he'd won Cologne and Katowice and all that shit in Blast World Finals, they were telling me you can only replace him with the top 3 IGL in the world. And it's like, well, that's obviously not going to happen, is it? Like, those players already are in the best teams. They don't leave and join this team. That's where they were wrong. I do think that was overreaching HooXi's level. For me, HooXi's level is more like top 10 IGL in the world. There you go. I think if he has a really good team, he could maybe border on top 5, but I don't see him as a genius IGL. I do think, though, he is he's the last samurai left, Pimp, of the real Danish IGLs. Because remember, Karrigan went away from that style a long time. He's been doing this Ancelotti thing. HooXi is the last, if you want to think of Danish CS as like this like tiki-taka football style, this is the last fucking samurai, mate. This is the last one still doing that style. And you know what? It does work. Like you can take pieces that, as I said, they could be on fucking Gamer Legion or OG, bro. With these pieces, he actually can get results in tournaments. He can compete with decent teams as well. He can have his team in the mix. I think you even saw in that final, it was famously on the Overpass one, where the team was playing so fucking pussy in the final, bro. HooXi even said afterwards in an interview, funny if you said that earlier about FUT not doing it, he even said we were playing not to lose, because even though, but I can tell you, the betting favourite was FUT. A lot of people thought, well, Astralis has all the experience though, and some of these players, like they've been there before, and FUT's inexperienced. Surely it'll be the other way around. Surely FUT will collapse and Astralis will win, and it'll be, you know, like a comfortable, and it'll be one of those, hey, get him next time, kid. You'll get. No, actually, it was Astralis that fell apart and looked whack, and on Overpass, they could not fucking buy a T round, bro. They were just getting their heads fragged off. So he literally did the classic, which is he called the timeout, and in the timeout, they showed this on broadcast. He basically just told them sort of the gist of like, stop being pussies, and then he literally just called like a rush B through Monster fucking on Overpass, and it worked. They did just like a mad like takeover of the round, like busting it completely open. And listen, they didn't win the map, but that was like a fucking cool moment where you got to see like fans love those timeouts, the impact of an IGL. So I do think HooXi's a good IGL. Like that's what's funny. In English, we call this sort of team like canny. It means like you have like a charm for them. You like them a bit. They're not the best or anything. They're not crazy. They're not bad. Like I enjoy watching this team play. I'm with you though. There are so many limiting factors though. If you actually want to say it, how much better can they get? Listen, I know you don't like this if you're fans. Roster move. That's how you get better. So I know people want to believe you can just get together in friendship and work. There's only so many roles in the game, boys. There's only so many strats you can try. There's only so many fucking like levels of form up. Like again, is Yabby going to become a 1.2 rating player against top 5? No. Is Forsey actually going to be able to compete with Monacy and Mulliner? Probably not. Let's be real. Like he's already done quite a good progression in his career. True, the Ryu guy hasn't done much. Maybe you could get more out of him, or you could replace him. But to me, I actually like, this is another one of those teams where I just like them to hang around like 11th in the world and just keep some other teams honest. Take the Liquids of the world and go, you know what, we'll beat you if you're on your bad fucking day, mate. G2, you better watch out when we play against you. I like teams like that.
Yeah, I agree. I like teams, who can act as gatekeepers to what is supposed to be good teams, like Liquid,
Yes.
So you put them up against Astralis, it's a bit of a litmus test. You can't beat Astralis. All right, Liquid, we don't need to talk about you.
Yes.
You're not relevant just yet in that conversation. I think that's cool, and I get that. I also do agree that HooXi is not a bad in-game leader. I very much agree with your point about being, if we, and I think I'm guilty of that sometimes as well, the Astralis name is just carrying so much weight and so much history, both for good and bad as of late, that you sometimes feel like, yeah, well, it's not good enough, or it doesn't really excite me. It's supposed to be Astralis, etc., etc. But yeah, we should address the fact that they're no longer owned by the same guys anymore, right? They've been bought out. It's not a Danish team anymore.
The joke, Pimp, is they're owned by the old Copenhagen Wolves team. If this was Copenhagen Wolves, this would be a way more fitting brand, right? That's exactly the sort of team that this would be.
Exactly. So it's just changed the landscape in that regard. I agree as well, HooXi, but that goes in, to a conversation that I'm trying to kind of brute force the narrative in a little bit more, because I hate when we speak about, Sonic and Falcons and we speak about Blade and Navi, that we don't, contextualize it like we do sometimes when we speak, let's say, football coaches, we like to reference football here. You mentioned yourself, like the tiki-taka style of Pep Guardiola in Manchester City. He famously came out and said, like, he would never, ever be able to do what Claudio Ranieri did in Leicester when they won the Premier League, Right. He would never be able to take a team, and make, when you have the sum of a team, and let's say that the team sum is 6 out of 10, so they're very average, but Claudio Ranieri, he made them play like 9 out of 10 somehow. Pep Guardiola has the ability to take an 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 and make him a 10 out of 10.
Yes.
But that's a different skill set. That's a different thing to do as a coach. I kind of label HooXi the same, as HooXi has the skill set to take a team that is maybe on firepower, or tactical understanding, etc., etc. They are 5 out of 10, but he can make them play like a 7 out of 10. So essentially, he's still raising the floor by 2 points. Whereas if you are a great in-game leader and you have 9 out of 10 players, to work with, yeah, maybe you can take them to play 10 out of 10. But does that make you a better in-game leader than the guy who's actually making more out of a less working team? And not all players, not all in-game leaders, not all coaches, whether that being in Counter-Strike or football, have the ability to, or have the authority for that matter as well, or have their own, I guess, individual skill set to be the coach who can take, world-class players and make them perform as the best in the world.
By the way, I'll be fair to fans. People think I'm a Karrigan fanboy. I think at this point in his career, Karrigan couldn't take this Astralis team and be good at them, mate. He'd really struggle.
I agree.
But at the same time, I wouldn't give HooXi Falcons. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's a fair point.
Exactly. And that's the point I'm trying to raise, that we need to understand the context of that, because I think HooXi is doing fantastically well in the context of Astralis. But as you said, I wouldn't want HooXi to get a move to Falcons again. I wouldn't want HooXi to get a move into a top 5 team again. I wouldn't want HooXi to lead G2 again, and replace Hunter. I think he's in the right spot right now, where he has players that he feels trust him. He can kind of get his idea out. It's not him being outcalled by a NiKo or a Monacy or by someone else within the team. And I think that's where he's supposed to be. And then hopefully by the time he can sign some players that fits within his system, and then slowly but surely build up his, I guess, legacy again and his authority again. But right now, I think HooXi is doing a great job with where he's at. Sort of like I would describe Snacks. I know most people think that I hate Snacks. I really don't.
It seems like he's doing a good job, mate.
He's doing a decent job in Gamer Legion, and I think that's the level he's at. I don't think he's an in-game leader that is in the conversation to be a top 3 or top 5 in-game leader. I don't think he ever was, even though he was in G2, and I think that's why I wanted him. Basically, I thought he was supposed to be removed because I wanted to unleash NiKo. I wanted to unleash Monacy. I think they deserve to do better than they did in G2, and I think he was a hindrance in that. But signing Snacks to Gamer Legion, that's the perfect signing. That's the perfect project for him to be in, and that's where he gets to do his best work, and I have respect for that. So there's just different levels to that. But as a fan from the outside, it seems like we can never have that, nuanced conversation. We can never go a layer deeper than just, is he good or is he bad? Is he right or is he wrong? Like there's more to the conversation than just that. And I think Zonic in Falcons is a great example of that. I think HooXi and Astralis is a great example of that. I think Blade in Navi is a great example of that as well. So there's just different ways of doing it, and I think the best football example ever is basically the Pep Guardiola, crediting Claudio Ranieri, saying that I could never do what he did, which is big words from what many consider to be the greatest coach of all time.